Good evening. You're very welcome to this event this evening. My name is Claire O'Connell, and I'm absolutely delighted to be moderating this event, which is part of the Samhain Agus Science Festival. And tonight we're going to invite you to listen to the Earth in a whole new way. More on that in a moment, but just to give you a little bit of a background to the Samhain Agus Science Festival, it's an annual Halloween-inspired mini-festival created by the researchers at Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies, or DIAS. Samhain Agus Science brings together researchers from across the disciplines in DIAS, so that's Celtic studies, theoretical physics, and cosmic physics, which in turn includes astronomy, astrophysics, and geophysics. And the idea is to mark the ancient feast of Samhain, which forms the basis of our modern day Halloween. The festival is now in its fourth year, and for 2021, the theme for Samhain Agus Science is exploring the dark side of science and Celtic heritage. And you can see the full programme at the DIAS website. And all the links will be in the chat, actually, if you want to go and check those out. So back to tonight's event. Well, we're going to be looking at the making of sounds of the earth, things that go bump in the ocean. That's the spooky bit, that's the Halloweeny bit. Where we'll be talking to sound artist and composer David Stalling, who has been working with a team of seismologists at DIAS, led by Sergei Lebedev, who is also a panelist tonight. Sergei is now a DIAS Adjunct Professor, and he's based at Cambridge University, but they started working on this in 2018. So what's emerged is a whole new way of making the sounds of the earth audible to the human ear. And as we're going along this evening, we're going to be listening to some of those clips and discussing how they came about. And if you're inspired to ask a question, please do. There's a Q&A box down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So if you use that panel to put questions in there, we'll be able to see them hopefully and get to them. If you are on social media, if you're tweeting about the event, please do use the hashtag DIAS Discovers. That's DIAS Discovers. And as I say, we will be putting resources from tonight's talk into the chat. They're probably already there. So I think we're going to kick off with a short video that I'm going to ask David to share. This is about 5 minutes long, and it gives you a bit of a background to how this whole project sort of came about and where the sounds come from in the ocean. So David, if I could ask you to share, and we'll enjoy this 5-minute video where we get to meet the team. Thanks.
Many of us have been staying at home for the last few weeks, in isolation with our families or with our flatmates. A group of scientists is now starting an expedition where they will also be isolated, but in a different setting, on a ship in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean.
Hi, my name is Laura.
My name is Arne. My name is Mick Smith.
My name is Clara.
I'm David Stalling.
They are an international team of researchers from all over the world, working together in Ireland in the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies.
My name is Raffaele. My name is Daniel.
Hi, my name is Janneke.
I'm Sergei Lebedev.
In 2018, they deployed 18 seismometers at the bottom of the North Atlantic Ocean, thousands of meters deep down in the dark water below the level of the sea, to discover the secrets of the Earth interior below the oceans. Can we know more about the movement of the tectonic plates? How are the earthquakes made? What are the volcanoes from?
Sea, power out at sea, and size stands for seismics. So that's what we measure. We use seismic waves to discover the structure of the Earth.
I'm using the vibrations generated by the ocean and the atmosphere with the ground to study the structure on Shore Island.
I'm a PhD student and I'm working on extinct volcanoes in the North Atlantic.
Our seaside team here includes people from different walks of life, and it's been a lot of fun working with them.
Now it's time to recover these instruments and the unique data they have recorded from the bottom of the ocean. But life on a research vessel has its challenges. Corridors are narrow, cabins are tiny, stairs are steep. The weather is often terrible. Having lunch in the kitchen is like eating a soup on a roller coaster. And if you happen to be in a storm, then it is when you're asked to become a hero. Once the storm is gone, the exciting challenges are back. The adventure, the joy of the discovery, the friendship, the spirit of exploration, and the ocean, turbulent and great.
Not the first days, it had been quite a rough weather, but now it's brilliant. It's a nice team and lots of success, so it is really good.
It's complicated, but yeah, I have bruises all around my body.
It's been great team, great camaraderie, all that sort of stuff. But no, it's been excellent.
The data are unique, and they will give us new insight into the deep structure of the Irish offshore, and also in the life of the great baleen whales of the North Atlantic.
Getting out deep into the Atlantic on a boat, I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It's one that I feel very privileged to be able to have.
On a boat, just walking around, trying to get from one room to the other without falling over. As you can see, it's moving. I'm holding on.
It takes a while to get used to the constant motion.
I love being here. It's very interesting.
Why am I here? Who doesn't want to be here? We are on a research vessel going toward Iceland and the Mid-Atlantic Bridge. It's a great experience and a terrific adventure.
The Seasize team is back on board the Celtic Explorer in April 2020 for the retrieval of the 18 seismometers left at the bottom of the North Atlantic Ocean in 2018.
Sharing that, David. That's brilliant. That gives us a nice background. I'm not sure my sea legs would be up to that boat at all. I had to laugh when you said it takes a while to get used to this. I don't think I would ever get used to it. But maybe, Sergei, maybe if I can start by asking you from a scientific perspective, why were you putting those little sensors at the bottom of the ocean? What was the idea behind that project?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So the Earth constantly vibrates at a broad range of frequencies, and that includes the constant hum of the Earth, the vibrations excited by the ocean waves interacting with the ocean floor. Then there are signals of earthquakes, and at higher frequencies there are the great baleen whales with their songs. So there are all these sounds, but we can't hear these with our ears. The frequencies are too low. They can, however, be recorded with these sensitive instruments that we put on the seafloor in this experiment. These are really technological wonders. These are the machines which we can just drop overboard. They descend and put themselves onto the seafloor, and they can record vibrations of nanometers at frequencies from let's say 10 minutes to many hertz. So, and all that, it's enormous pressures in the seafloor. So with that information, we will be able to find out more about what's happening deep within the Earth under the North Atlantic. That's one of the goals of the project. And we have also recorded numerous songs of whales, fin whales, blue whales, and we hope other creatures. That's another goal of the project and another thing we hope to study.
Excellent. And can I ask you why you chose to put the machines in those particular points in the North Atlantic Ocean? What's the method behind that pinking?
Well, we know the area that we want to study, and then in this area we try to choose simply flat points that the instruments wouldn't fall over, and also some shallow parts of the in shallow waters, the instruments record more noise, and we would like them to be less noisy, so we try to find deepest places.
So you really thought about where you were putting these instruments, because I think sort of as people who maybe just are swimming in the shallow parts of the ocean, we don't stop and think that the ocean has so much of a terrain at the ocean floor. So you had to map out exactly where you thought the best place was to drop these instruments.
Yes, careful planning went into that. When we boarded the ship, we knew exactly where they would be, and if anything went wrong, we had backup plans.
Oh, good. Always good to have backup plans in the North Atlantic, I think, particularly with that weather. And David, maybe if I can ask you then, how you came into what was your role in the project? You were on the boat. What were you doing there?
Yeah, so I had been invited to take part in an artist residency aboard the Celtic Explorer, and it was part of a project called Aerial Sparks, curated by Louise Manifold from Galway, and it was a project that was part of the Galway 2020 European Capital of Culture. And so it was a group exhibition that was in planning, and as part of the exhibition, Louise had asked all of the artists to spend some time on the Celtic Explorer to get some inspiration, to maybe connect with scientists, and let this experience inform the work we were going to make for the show. So that was, I started as early as I think 2016, and then in 2018 I had a choice of different surveys that were happening during the year, and so there were fish surveys and seabed mapping, and I found the choice to take part in a geological or seismological survey the most interesting, and it suited my schedule, and it was quite a long survey. I think we were due to go out for 3 weeks, and I hadn't been to sea before, and I kind of thought, yeah, if I do it, I kind of want to go for a proper period of time, yeah. And so I ended up then on the Seasize OBS deployment mission with Sergei and his team, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. First time on a ship in the ocean, and I brought all my field recording equipment. I make a lot of field recordings as part of my practice, and I combine them then with musical sounds. But as soon as we got out onto the sea, the rough weather started, and we got into quite a big storm, and that went on for most of the journey, and I found myself suddenly very challenged to do any sort of work, because just to sort of find my bearings, and so I was looking to occupy myself just in order not to get seasick, and so I was very happy then to make contact with the scientific team on board, and things kind of took off from there. So I tried to understand what the team was doing, how the seismometers worked, and so we had conversations then about sound and music, and I started to find correspondences between our disciplines, where we're both basically working with waves, and albeit at very different frequencies. And so our discussions then became entangled sort of in technical aspects of, how do you record this data, and how do you interpret the recordings you make, and I was immediately interested in, how could this sound if you listen to it. And so we had a bit of internet access on the ship, and you start looking around, searching around, and so there seemed to have been a few projects, attempts at making seismic events audible, mostly earthquakes, but then you find a few sound files online, and most of the time it's just it's like maybe 10 seconds long, and it just goes and that's it, and okay, that's an earthquake. And so I wasn't that impressed with it, to be honest, and I thought there must be a better way to make this audible. So and that's how it started.
And Sergei, could I ask you, had you ever thought about that before? How maybe the frequencies that you're working at are just, we can't hear them because the wavelengths aren't the right ones for us to hear. Had you thought about how to make them audible before, or was this a new venture for you as well?
Well, I've heard these sonifications of earthquakes before, of course, some of them more creative than others, but none of them were quite as nice as what came out of our collaboration with David. So it was exciting to talk to David about, all kinds of things, art, music, and the signals, the waves we are listening to with our ears and with our devices. And it was clear there is a great potential to make something interesting and new.
Very good. And of course, the outputs from that collaboration are on the website soundsoftheearth.ie, which I think is probably in the chat if you want to go and check that out as well. But maybe we could listen to some of the sounds that came out of this collaboration as well. So perhaps, David, if I could ask you to play a clip. There's one, I think, of an earthquake, a famous earthquake that was picked up in Birr. Now, obviously this, Birr isn't under the ocean, but the earthquake happened under the ocean. So maybe if I could ask you to share that with us and we can talk about it.
Okay. So
this was an earthquake, a very famous earthquake off the coast of Japan, the Tohoku earthquake in 2011. If I have the right clip.
Okay, so 1 second.
Okay. It's just fascinating that all these vibrations are happening all around us and we just don't sense them. So that sounds extremely desolate and eerie, I have to say. And Sergei, maybe if you can explain to us from a seismology point of view, what is happening in an earthquake that's making those vibrations happen?
Well, the first few parts of the seismogram are well known and well understood. There is a P wave that was the first, the primary wave that arrived. Then there was at somewhat lower frequency, the S wave, the secondary wave. And then the very deep sound was from the surface wave. They are dispersed. So first the lowest frequency arrived and then higher and higher frequency later in time. So these were familiar sounds that was interesting and pleasant to hear with such nice translation into audible range.
Yes.
But what I find the most amazing is what follows. In the end, the code is a bit longer and you can hear it on the website. So after the surface wave, there is a coda that for a large earthquake lasts for a very long time. And so it's made just of scattered waves that arrive from all directions, just randomly scattered waves that keep coming from all directions, just random wave propagation. And yet, when we listen to these sounds, you can hear completely unexpected harmonies. At some places, you can hear a choir. At some places, a sound of an organ. And that's quite amazing. It just appears of presumably a random scattering of waves in the earth. And yet, it makes you think of the numerous casualties of this earthquake, which sort of adds to how somber and amazing it sounds.
Yes, absolutely, because this earthquake had a huge death toll, unfortunately, and of course prompted the Fukushima disaster as well. I suppose it's interesting, though, to think that those data, those waves coming out of the earthquake have a signature that you can put into kind of that musicality as well. David, can I ask you about how did you take the data that were coming out of the earthquake and create those sounds in a way that made those kind of eerie sounds, those harmonies with the waves?
Well, first of all, the data, most of the seismic data is available across several global networks, and so it can be downloaded. The download process is quite tedious, something that we might talk about later on, that we try to improve. But for this data, I was very fortunate to have the help of Dr. Raffaele Bonadio and Dr. Maria Czechmistrenko, who helped me download the data and convert it into a wave file, an audio file. And with this particular file, I took that, and once it's transposed into the audible range, it becomes very short. So the actual event at the audible frequency range is only a couple of seconds long. And so we employed a technique called spectral stretching. And so we basically stretched the sound to be 2 minutes long in order for it to be experienced. Yeah.
That we can sense it. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a stretching sound. I love how you thinking about that stretching sound. It's very cool. Maybe we can move on to another clip now.
Okay.
I think of a fin whale in the North Atlantic.
Okay.
So this is thankfully a little less disastrous than an earthquake. But I think, we probably maybe have heard of whale song. I think in the 70s there was a fashion of bringing out records of whale songs, but this sounds slightly different as well. that's lovely. So it's so almost soothing. Sergei, I know you had mentioned that capturing the data, the sounds of the fin whales was one of the aims of the project. So were you, I mean, you know, were you pleased with this result?
Well, this is new to us. Our team were seismologists by training, and that was the main focus of the project. But this is a unique data set. It's 19 months of continuous data across more than half the width of the Atlantic Ocean. So it's an important data set to study the whales. Fin whales and most other species have been recovering very nicely after the depletion in previous decades. So now there are tens of thousands of them in the North Atlantic. We know that, which is great. But there are still North Atlantic right whales that is critically endangered. So they are harder to find in the recordings. We haven't yet, but there are fin whales that we found, and that gives us hope to contribute usefully to understanding how populations of different species are doing offshore Ireland.
Great. Good noisy fin whales. And David, again, how did you sort of have to stretch the sound to make this one, or was there as much stretching involved as the earthquake?
No, actually the earthquakes are the only sounds that we decided to stretch. Everything else is actually mostly untreated. We would have maybe employed a little bit of equalization, or if the signal was too weak, we would have, you know, maybe some noise reduction. But apart from that, there actually it's the data as it is made audible as a sound file. So with the fin whale sounds, fin whales make extremely loud calls, and so they're very easily identified on the spectrogram. So we were able to find them very quickly, and then just bring them up a little bit. So only accelerated 6 times from the original timeline, and then we have these lovely bass sounds. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are lovely. Actually, they're really soothing. We have another. You have another one. This is fascinating. This is a kind of, I think, a sped up one of Earth humming along, and it's from around the time when we were entering the pandemic. I think, is that right? Kind of the first few months of 2020.
That's right.
Yeah. So maybe we can play that one and hear what a sped up version of what Earth was doing while we were.
Okay. So maybe
phase.
Yes, maybe just to give a very brief introduction. So this is a sort of a long-term recording. So we basically took 3 months of data, which is a lot of data, and we collated it. And Maria Chekmistrenko wrote a software that enabled me to download the data myself and convert it to sound, and to basically collate days and days of data. And so this is sort of the largest data set that I've worked with, and it was quite challenging. So what we wanted to make audible with this was the very, very low sounds. Sergei maybe can explain a little bit what they are exactly. But so this is 3 months of data sped up, accelerated by 12,000 times. So we hear the whole 3 months in 12 minutes. I can recommend going to the website and listening to the whole piece, but I'm just going to play now a very short excerpt from it. And so it starts in February 2020, but I'm going to skip to maybe to mid-March. And so we had a lot of weather in February 2020. There were some large storms, and then in April it sort of calmed down. We had a period during the height of the lockdown, we had beautiful weather, and it was very warm and very, very quiet. And if you look at the video when I show it in a minute, you can see the weather pattern. In February, it's much more busy, and then it sort of lightens up towards April. So, but I go to about mid-March, and yeah, I play that from here. Okay, now.
Brilliant. It's again such a fascinating sound. I think it's almost one I'd be sticking in the headphones. You know, sometimes people you can get noises that block out all distractions when you want to work. I think that would work for me. But Sergei, maybe I can ask you first of all. We saw a lot of labels there on the video. What were we listening to exactly? Obviously sped up, but what are we listening to?
Well, there were a few different types of hum of the earth. That is to say, the sounds that the waves that propagate in different directions all the time. The sort of hissing sound at the higher end of the spectrum was the primary and secondary microseisms. Those are excited by ocean waves as they interact with the seafloor, either near the coast or further out in the ocean. And then at the lowest frequency, there was the long period hum of the earth that's excited by storms far away. And that's also, there is some instrument noise at long period excited by long period motions. But the interesting funny sounds that sounded a bit like drops of water that were the earthquakes, and they stood out because they include sound at all frequencies, and they have this dispersive component of the surface waves that make it sound very particular.
So it's interesting to think that there are so many earthquakes happening. I suppose, you know, it's kind of earth settling. It's not always the huge ones that we read about in the news. These things are, the earth is settling all the time. David, in terms of working with this data set, you know, when you're faced with sort of 3 months with all those data, how did you decide to condense it down?
I guess I'd read a few papers, seismology papers, and on about the lockdown and how the Earth quietened down during that period due to less human activity, and that was what I was originally looking for. And but we had also played around with, you know, trying to listen to the earth hum. That was one of our aims. You know, can we make that audible? And so I thought the example that we had previously was quite short, and so I thought, wouldn't it be nice to just work with lots of data? It was quite challenging, as sort of gigabytes and gigabytes of data to work with, and a lot of audio, and even to get it to the point where it was in the right format. It was a very long process, going back and forth, tweaking the software, downloading the whole data set multiple times, actually, and until it was right. But yeah, when it suddenly worked, it was great. It was really good.
It's fascinating. It's almost hypnotic, listening to the earth hum. And I think you mentioned there the fact that lockdown, human activity quietened down, and I think we probably all experienced that in our own different ways. But I think you have a sound recordings that actually capture that. Could you share those with us?
Yeah. So this is the first one I'm going to play is from a busy Monday, sometime in February. Busy Monday in Dublin. So we decided to take data from the one of the Dublin stations, which is located in the in the Dublin Mountains. Yeah, I'm going to play a little bit.
Brilliant. And it's amazing how you can see, like almost around rush hour, you can hear everything's so much busier. It's fascinating to think that we're sort of trampling around on the surface of the earth, creating these little waves. And maybe you could play for us now one where we weren't all getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning and going to work, and we were working from home or staying at home.
Okay.
Isn't that such a different sound? It really is. Our own lockdown story, and this is nothing to do with seismology, but we noticed our dog used to go out in the garden and just kind of bark at all times of the day, and never really knew why. And only when all the traffic died down and all the sounds died down, we realized she was having conversations with other dogs in the neighborhood, and now we could hear it. So, but in a similar way, everything quietened down in those months. And I mean, were you surprised by the extent of the change?
Yeah, I guess, and we were wondering, you know, what's left, you know, what are the sounds that are left, and we assume that it's from a waterworks that are very nearby the seismometer, and so the continuous lines you see on the spectrogram that translate into sort of musical pitches. That they could be from a big water pump, because they start pumping sort of at 6:30 in the morning, and you know, then there's a sort of a tea break, and then there is a lunch break, and then they, you know, they switch on and off. And I did a bit of research, and so those pumps they pump water down to South Dublin Waterworks mines and that area, and they supply tens of thousands of households with water. So we were all at home, and you know, but we were still taking a shower, and so that's probably what that is. And but everything else, sort of maybe big trucks or other big machinery is missing from that picture, because everything else sort of stopped.
That is fascinating. Well, thank you for sharing those clips with us. We do have a question coming in from the audience, and please do share your questions in the Q&A box. So this one is from John Murrell, and it's: did you detect signals from any of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge volcanoes? If so, what did they sound like? So maybe, Sergei, you could explain to us what the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is and why there might be so many volcanoes there, and then tell us if you heard them.
Well, the mid-ocean ridges is where the new oceanic crust is formed as the oceanic plates move away from the ridge. And indeed, this is where most volcanoes on the Earth are located, at mid-ocean ridges, and where a lot of earthquakes occur. The volcanoes themselves are fairly quiet. They make some vibrations, but they wouldn't stand out at a distance of a few 100 kilometers, as much as the earthquakes that occur on the mid-ocean ridge. And we have recorded a few of those, and some of those water drop sounds on David's piece we heard before. Those were the regional earthquakes from the Mid-Atlantic Ridge.
Wow, so lots of things going bump in the ocean along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and you were able to hear them. Brilliant, good stuff. Please do put your questions in the Q&A box. We have just a few minutes left, but hopefully we can ask those questions if you put them in there. I suppose maybe, Sergei, can I ask you about your involvement in the project? And as a seismologist, has it changed your interpretation of the Earth or your work in any way?
Well, David and I have discovered, well, perhaps we knew that and expected that, but we've found many more ways in which our work is similar. We find harmonies and dig until we get to the bottom of it. In that sense, artists and scientists are similar in our activities, have a lot in common. But specifically, we also found a few things that we could find if we were looking at them, but we just weren't. And so David's recordings showed, for example, a 6-hour periodic signal in the variations in long period noise. And that's something we could find, but it would never occur to us it hasn't at least occurred to us to look for it. And now that we have found it with David, then we thought about it, and I thought, aha, okay, so that must be the periodicity caused by tides. and tides cause change in patterns of currents near the seafloor, and that causes these signals that our instruments record. So there are also discoveries that just thanks to the change of perspective that this work gives us.
That's amazing. So by seeing or listening to the data in a new way, you were starting to see patterns that had not jumped out at you before.
Yes.
Oh,
we wouldn't think of looking for.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And isn't that a lesson for, I suppose, lots of scientists, maybe, that, you know, teaming up with an artist might help you get that new perspective and help you make those kind of, you know, rich discoveries as well in data sets. David, what about you? I mean, do you look at the Earth now in the same way? Would you ever look at it the same way again or listen to it?
It definitely changed my my perspective, and it really gave me a sense of scale, and it sort of put me in my place as a human being, listening to this giant planet we're living on, and you know, perhaps we should listen to it a bit more. And see what it needs, what needs to be done. But yeah, no, it expanded my practice in a big way, and expanded the way that I have worked with field recordings. So field recordings are not only going out and recording the birds of the dawn chorus or bats, but it's also there are also field recordings of sounds that are all around us but we can't hear them, or waves, I should say. Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. And it's, you know, it's a good week to be thinking about the importance of looking after the Earth. Maybe you should send a few of your sound files over to Glasgow this week and let people get that perspective as well. You mentioned there, I just wanted to ask you about the challenges of this work. You mentioned there, maybe I got the sense that maybe some of the data sets, maybe downloading them, things like that, you know, were those kind of the biggest challenges, those technical sort of bandwidth challenges that you had?
Yeah, that certainly was the, we spent most of the time wrangling the data. And I believe this is a common challenge amongst seismologists to access the data, and so it's good. I had to sort of do a basic crash course in Python programming, and it's just to work with Maria Czechmistrenko, who wrote this piece of software for me, just for me to operate it. And but we made it work, and it's available now, and hopefully other people will start using it as well, so it can be developed further. And I'm very, very pleased that I can just go and download some data to work with, and you know, I have a fair idea. So it was a very big learning experience for me as a composer, because usually as a composer I work quite differently. Yeah, I might write down notes on paper that I hear in my head, or that I play on the piano, or I work with field recordings which are already in the audio domain. But to work with this data, that probably was the biggest challenge and the biggest learning experience.
Yeah, that's a whole new set of skills. Well done. And Sergei, what about you? I mean, what were the challenges, or were there challenges for you in this project?
Sounds of the Earth. Well, it was a journey of discovery with David. We discovered things we didn't know we would. And in every journey like this, there are, of course, challenges, mostly of trying to understand each other, to understand each other's perspective. There are many things we do in similar ways, but there are things we do in different ways. Composers, as I discovered, like things unstructured and abstract. whereas I really like to put labels on things so that we understand every single thing. And so what you've seen is a compromise between our visions in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Well, I'm glad you met in the middle on that one. And what kind of feedback, not audio feedback, but what kind of feedback from other humans have you been getting on the compositions?
Yeah, so far it's been very positive. People comment on the immersive qualities, and they like to listen to it when when they need to relax and focus on it completely, and you do have to take the time to they're quite expanded pieces, and it's hard to sort of get the depth in just a couple of 1-minute clips, but if you immerse yourself and if you allow yourself to be immersed, then there's a big they're very rich in sonic events, and thankfully Sergei was there to tell me what are these sounds, what's this little bit now that we see on the spectrogram, we hear something, and yeah, so generally the feedback has been very good. Yeah.
Right. And I have to say, even listening to the clips and listening on the website, knowing the provenance of those sounds, kind of knowing more about where they came from, just makes it so much more meaningful as well. And Sergei, how about you? What kind of feedback have you been getting on the compositions? Any comments from colleagues or other scientists?
Well, I think seismologists who have seen it, they are impressed and very pleased.
Good. And would you be sorry, go on. Yeah.
Well, I think the achievement of David's is that it's not just you hear something. He made an effort to make it a very faithful translation of sounds of the earth. So there is a broad range, and we can really hear the rich sound that is there. So that's special and quite new. I don't think anybody has done this before. So my colleagues appreciate it, I think, as much as I do.
Very good. Would you encourage researchers in other disciplines to try and listen to their data? Not necessarily seismology, but just encode their data in sound and see what happens? Is that a good idea?
I would.
You would. You would, David. I guess that. But I'm just thinking, the way sometimes we talk about data visualization and even things, we can see things like, temperature change in the earth, and, the earth gets increasingly red as the years go on. That sort of data audioization could actually give you a whole new dimension into issues we're facing or trends that we need to understand, even things like pandemics. We're very used to seeing graphs. I wonder if we could hear those graphs sometimes. Would we hear the Discord? And we have another question from John Merle. It's just a few minutes left, but we'll squeeze one in. Astronomers and earth scientists have also been using sonification to look at data, including a blind astronomer in the USA. Oh, thank you for that, John. It's a comment. Very good. Good to hear. Yeah, I think it does give a whole new perspective, the audio dimension. As I mentioned, we are coming towards the end of the session. I'd just like to round up by asking both David and Sergei, what are your hopes for the future of this work, or of the collaboration? Sergei, maybe I could start with you on that.
Well, we feel it's just a beginning. David introduced sort of a new way of looking at it, a new language for us, and a lot more stories, a lot more pieces of music can be composed in this language. So as we move forward, I think there are great opportunities to create new pieces, new art, and new experiences that weren't available to us before.
Very good. With all these signatures that the Earth has been making for forever, I suppose, but we just haven't really been able to plug into them until until you know, you understand what to do with the audio. And David, how about you? What are your hopes for the future of the collaboration?
I guess the online presentation, that was also a bit of a compromise, and I would love to present this work physically and make it for people to experience in a space, be it a gallery space or elsewhere. And I think there's a lot of potential for to experience it outside without headphones, and you know, walking around in a space. And also I would like to I have some ideas on how to work with larger data sets, and how to make them spatially explorable, and so that's the future of the work. The other bit is the software end. It's something you know, we got this working now, and it would be great if we could improve it and use it for something else.
Very good. Very good. Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up now because it's coming up to 9 o'clock. But just before we go, I just wanted to alert everybody to an important initiative that Science Foundation Ireland have at the moment. David, maybe I could ask you to share that slide. It's called Creating Our Future, and it's a Government of Ireland campaign to stimulate a national conversation that generates ideas from the public to inform the direction of research in Ireland. So what would you, the members of the public, that's you, like to be done? You can submit your ideas and suggestions for future research, or questions that can be answered by further research. It could be based on an opportunity or a challenge you see for yourself, for your community, for Ireland, the world. Don't limit yourself, or it's just a topic you're passionate and curious about, and you'd like researchers to explore. Maybe you've had a few of those this evening. So to make your submission, log on to www.creatingourfuture.ie. So that's for Science Foundation Ireland.